You're tuned in to the Andrew Lawton Show.
This is the footage here, and I'm going to talk over it as it plays for you here. But this is the footage where David Menzies is... I'm hoping the footage will start playing. David is talking. Chrystia Freeland is right there. There's a pole. He avoids the pole. Moves his shoulder to avoid the police officer, who puts his arm out. And then eventually he is pulled aside. Chrystia Freeland gets out of Dodge, and David, as you saw in that first video, is slammed up against the wall. He's later put in handcuffs, carried away, and he was released with no charges. But if the goal was to protect Chrystia Freeland from being questioned by a reporter, mission accomplished. David Menzies is here to talk about this directly. David, good to talk to you, sir. First off, how are you? I mean, you've been through this before, but you actually looked in that moment quite startled.
Andrew, and by the way, I hope you had a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. But gee, speaking of the new year, law enforcement is really off on the wrong foot. You know, one of the cheekiest comments I came across in the various streams, Andrew, is, hey, Menzies, this is on you. You should have been calling for genocide of an identifiable group. Then the Mounties would have bought you Timbits and a cup of coffee, as we saw the Toronto police do to the pro-Hamas demonstrators on Saturday as they were blockading the Avenue Road Bridge. But, you know, I have to tell you, Andrew, aside from the shock, the overwhelming feeling was deja vu all over again. You may recall back in December of 2021, my ace cameraman, Lincoln J., and he was the shooter at the event yesterday. We were in downtown Toronto to scrum the Prime Minister. The context was this, Andrew. Trudeau had said that he wanted Canadians not to get together with family and friends over Christmas time because COVID is just too dangerous. At the same time, here he was in early December going to a downtown Toronto restaurant for one of those $1,700 a plate fundraisers, and they were packed in like sardines. The hypocrisy was off the charts. So Lincoln and I stood on a sidewalk, and we waited for the motorcade to come, and Blackface is always late by at least an hour, and eventually he came. And my goal was to simply ask him, Mr. Prime Minister, how do you justify this double standard? Canadians can't get together to celebrate the Christmas holidays, but you're going into a packed restaurant. And to my shock, Andrew, and I invite your viewers to check this out on our website or on YouTube, these Royal Canadian Mounted Henchmen jumped out, grabbed me, didn't even identify who they are. They're in plain clothes, no badge, no uniform, bounced my head off of a wooden fence. I wasn't even under arrest. That's the really shocking part of it. But it's always been my theory, and I can't prove this, of course, unless Trudeau himself fessed up. They knew who we are. I'm completely identifiable. I've got the Rebel News mic flash in my hands. And I think they acted on the Prime Minister's orders. He saw us. He hates us. He said, boys, give him the works. Because to me, it's inexplicable that Mounties on their own accord would jump out of their SUVs and assault a journalist. Nevertheless, we fast forward to yesterday.
Yeah.
And here it is again. I'm on at a taxpayer-funded performing arts venue in Richmond Hill, which is where I live, and I'm not touching Chrystia Freeland or her companion at all. I'm just trying to ask questions. And Andrew, I can tell you, I felt that Mountie before I saw him because my focus was on Chrystia Freeland. And
the poll. I mean, he was literally standing watching you. And I don't want to say obstructing your path, but he knew where you were walking, and he knew that there was a collision here. And it's not to say that, you couldn't have like gone out of your way to get away from him. But when you watch the video, what I find notable here is that there's not a lot of room between you and Chrystia Freeland. If you were to try to move out of the way of him, you would have bumped into her, and then you would have had a bigger problem on your hands. And it looks like he has his arm out. I mean, he is the obstruction here. So I'm not seeing the assault on a police officer of which you were accused.
Yeah. I think, Andrew, this was, as I say over in the UK, a stitch up. This was a frame job. He knew exactly what he was doing. He ambushed me. He initiated the physical contact. I have no interest in getting physical with anyone, for goodness sakes. I'm certainly not going to touch a female cabinet minister who I tower over. I just was asking questions, but it seems, Andrew, in Canada of 2024, impolite and insensitive questions, those are verboten. You can get arrested, I guess, for wrongthink. I mean, I liken Canada to a banana republic, except, of course, we don't grow bananas in Canada, Andrew, as you know. So let's call it a maple syrup republic under Trudeau. But the thing is, I think, if you're not an admirer of Rebel News or Ezra Levant or myself, that's fine. But surely there should be people out there, especially in our industry of journalism, that stand up or should be standing up and saying, this is wrong, this is verboten. But the mainstream media in Canada, at least, has been silent. And this is a story in terms of Twitter impressions. I think it's over 10 million as we speak. It's absolutely shocking. And that was kind of the same treatment the mainstream media gave to what happened in December of 2021. They either ignored it or almost came up with a conspiratorial theory. That was David Aiken's mantra at Global, saying that this was, all pre-planned. It was absolutely outrageous.
Well,
So,
yeah, I mean, you chose to ask the question to Chrystia Freeland, but how
yes.
they responded is on them. And I will say, though, you do seem to have a bit more support this time around than you did then. I mean, one, I'll put up the tweet. Elon Musk weighed in on this, the owner of X. And Elon says here, fine for the officer to body block. I'm not actually convinced that is fine, but he says it's false to say that you deliberately assaulted an officer. But to his credit, Pierre Poilievre, and I know the conservatives have historically had a bit of a strained relationship with Rebel News, but Pierre Poilievre weighed in. He shared the Rebel video, said, this is the state of freedom of the press in Canada in 2024 after 8 years of Trudeau. And, it's funny, Alexander Brown, who runs a Substack that is quite important for people to pay attention to, he had said here, he was tired of I don't like David Menzies, but, or I'm not a fan of Rebel News, but. He said, if you can't just look at this and say this is wrong, you are part of the problem here. And this is a press freedom issue. Let me ask, has your inbox been met with any support from the civil liberties groups in this country or the journalistic advocacy groups in this country, apart from the independent press gallery?
No, the silence is deafening, Andrew, and it's really egregious in terms of, you made a quote there that I thought was significant. I don't like David Menzies. I don't like Ezra Levant. I don't like Rebel News. We're getting a lot of those. And it just shows you how egregious and offside that Mountie was. Even when these commentators state that they're not particular fans of ours, and that's fine.
Yeah, they don't want to support you, and it pains them that they have to because it's that bad what happened.
Exactly. That's the point. And I thought you did a brilliant tweet yesterday on this matter, Andrew, where you pinpointed the time code. I think it was 009. So the 9-second mark, where you see the Mountie initiating physical contact. And, And it's crazy. I mean, I know if you literally touch somebody, that can be taken as assault, but this was at best incidental contact. I mean, the real roughing up came when they were putting the cuffs on me and slamming my head into the wall. I don't know why they do that, Andrew. I've been arrested a few times, and every time I'm incapacitated with handcuffs, they still slam my head off a wall or a fence, or the hood of the police SUV. I don't get that. Maybe they think they're on TV or something. But yeah, I want to thank you for pinpointing that out. And golly, I got to say, in slow motion, it does look like the Zapruder film from the Kennedy assassination.
Was there a second Menzoid coming in? But
yeah, and when you think of it, Andrew,
yeah.
I've always looked at that film and I've called it the great, great, great granddaddy of social media. Now almost everybody has a cell phone camera and we can record it. But if Zapruder didn't have that little 8mm Bell and Howell camera, that footage wouldn't exist. So it's interesting you bring it up. And, there are other cameras. We've got an appeal out to anyone else who filmed this. And of course, the Richmond Hill Center for the Performing Arts, they have closed circuit security surveillance as well. I'm sure as part of our lawsuit, we'll be asking for that footage as well, Andrew.
Yeah, you mentioned the lawsuit. So let me ask you about this, David. I saw your boss, Rebel Commander Ezra Levant, tweet this morning that you're suing Freeland, the RCMP, and York Regional Police, as I understand. What's happening there?
That's correct. I believe there's 4 things we're suing for, including false arrest, malicious prosecution, and garden variety assault on me because, far from the RCMP's narrative, he did the assault. I wasn't under the arrest at the time, nor was I, and Andrew, I just want to go out on a limb here. If I was some guy wearing a balaclava and wearing camouflage and it looked like I had something that resembled a handgun or a rifle, I can see a preemptive strike by law enforcement. I can. But, Andrew, they know who we are. I've got the Rebel News mic flash out. I wear my trademark hat. And they know I'm not there wearing trouble on my shirt. I'm not there to hurt anyone. So they can't play that card. And I can tell you, Andrew, if any of your viewers have it in their heart to support our case against this draconian fascism we saw on display in Richmond Hill, if they can kindly go to standwithdavid.com, that's standwithdavid.com. And I know things are tough these days, but if you have a few extra bucks, we crowdfund our revenue. As you know, we don't take any government funding. And if they can go to standwithdavid.com, make a donation, that would be greatly appreciated, Andrew.
And I just to confirm, they released you without laying any charges. So this egregious assault on a police officer, by their own admission, either didn't happen or didn't rise to the level of needing to charge you.
Absolutely, Andrew. As the footage goes on, you see me eventually getting loaded into a police SUV, a York Regional Police SUV. The cops were gracious enough to handcuff me, take the handcuffs off behind my back and put them in the front, because I told them with the cramped space in that cruiser, I have double hip replacement. This would be not safe for me. And so at least they gave me that little mercy. But here's the funny thing. It wasn't, as the saying goes, not so funny at the time. They were telling me, we're going to drive you to the police station on Major Mackenzie Drive for processing. And then they had another officer come up to them. There was some kind of conversation, and they waited for a while. And then they drove off and they started going northbound. And since I live in Richmond Hill, Andrew, I know the station's southbound. So I'm thinking, where are we going? And I'm brought to the back of a school, which has been dismissed. And I'm thinking, holy moly, what is this? The Cherry Beach Express, right? It was unbelievable. But it turned out to be a good news story, because they said, we've been told the Mountie in question has declined to press charges. I guess he had a come to Jesus moment. Maybe he saw some cell phone footage, because this is about almost an hour after the incident. So we're just going to release you here. So it was like catch and release.
It was like dump you out on the curb somewhere, basically, and just
and
okay.
I walked back to the Performing Arts Center, not to go inside, even though we were invited as media, because according to the police, myself and Lincoln had been trespassed, which makes no sense, because if there's no charges, what's the issue? So we had to do the rest of the reporting on the sidewalk. And I got to tell you, Andrew, our original goal of going there, we didn't even know Blackface and company were going to be there yesterday. I was at the first commemoration ceremony for that Ukrainian airline that was shot down. Let's keep in mind, Andrew, 179 innocent civilians plus one unborn baby, which of course the media will never list as a homicide. That included 55 Canadians, by the way, most of them of Persian descent. And when I went in 2020 to that very same venue, the Richmond Hill Center for the Performing Arts, there were politicians of every level, every political stripe, except one. And that would be none other than the Liberal MP for Richmond Hill, Majid Johari. If you can imagine, Andrew, Majid Johari supports the Iranian regime. He's had meetings with Iranian government officials in Canada. And it's so beyond the pale for me. I've lived in Richmond Hill for 25 years. I can tell you it's a significant Persian minority there. I believe it's as high as 14%. All the Persians I've met there have been wonderful people. I go to Persian shops, Persian restaurants. They're typically people that fled the regime post 1979, the revolution. They're getting away from tyranny. And imagine, Andrew, that somehow, some way, that the member of parliament for that riding of Richmond Hill is a pro-regime person. Now, he didn't show up at the first commemoration, and I had people there tell me that was for his own safety, because there were so many people who had relatives that died on that plane, and for him to show his face would be egregious. So that was really why I was there. I knew there'd be politicians there, but would Majid Johari show up? Well, not only did he show up, evidently, because again, I couldn't get in, but Trudeau himself. And Andrew, talk about the continuation of lies. It's been 4 years since that egregious incident where Canadians were murdered in cold blood. The IRGC is still not a terrorist group. Not recognized as one, I should say, by the Canadian government. Trump recognized it as one. When Biden came into power, I thought I'd never say anything positive about Biden, but he didn't take them off the list. So why is it that they're not on the list? And even if you look at the mealy-mouthed statement Trudeau said, it was along the lines, we'll look at ways of putting them on. Look at ways. You've really got an unofficial majority government. You can do it today, if you wanted to.
I got to jump in here, David. I should also point out, I promised I would let you go at 1:20 at your request, and you were the one that took us over. So that's on you, sir. But you had some good commentary. And I should say, Majid Johari has denied these allegations, which were, I believe, originally made by an Iranian journalist, that he had this relationship with Iranian intelligence. He says, no, he's not loyal to the regime, but I would encourage people to look up reporting on him in the past. David Menzies, glad you got the cuffs off. Always good to talk to you, sir.
Well, thank you. And one last thing, if Majid Johari is denying it, this man is such a liar, Andrew. He will spit in your face and tell you it's raining, okay? So
you're trying to get us sued, David. I was trying to give us an easy exit here. Now I should say I am not making an accusation that he is a liar, but I do think that if he has nothing to hide, he should make himself available to independent journalists and not have the police stand in the way as Ms. Freeland did there yesterday. David, thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrew. All the best in the new year.
All right.
Thanks for listening to The Andrew Lawton Show. Support the program by donating to True North at www.tnc.news.